In the summer of 1859, the United States and the British Empire were positioned for a massive transcontinental conflict. Thousands of soldiers had been mobilized to the Pacific Northwest. Artillery batteries were entrenched in defensive positions, and heavily armed naval warships sat anchored offshore with their cannons locked on their targets. The cause for this high-stakes military mobilization was a single hungry farm pig. When borders are left undefined, the most mundane property disputes can bypass local law and instantly force global powers into a military standoff. The geography of the crisis was centered on San Juan Island, a small landmass positioned directly between the United States and British-controlled Canada. This 1846 treaty map illustrates the source of the confusion. The document used vague language to draw the border through this specific channel, leaving the exact boundary line open to interpretation and allowing both nations to claim full legal ownership of the island. This diplomatic oversight forced a demographic collision on the ground. Independent American pioneer farmers began establishing homesteads on the exact same territory occupied by employees of the British-owned Hudson's Bay Company. Because there was no single recognized legal authority to enforce laws or mediate disputes, the island became a zone where any minor local grievance could bypass civil courts and trigger a federal military emergency. On June 15, 1859, a large black pig owned by the British company wandered into an American farmer's potato patch and began eating the crops. The farmer, Lyman Tetler, had seen his harvest damaged by the animal one too many times. Frustrated by the lack of compensation or control, he raised his rifle and shot the pig. British authorities immediately treated the shooting as a criminal act under their own laws, threatening to arrest Cutler and remove him from the island by force. Cutler and the other American settlers rejected British jurisdiction entirely. They refused the arrest warrant and sent an urgent request to the U.S. government for military intervention to protect their property. Without a shared legal framework to handle a simple agricultural dispute, the incident had no local path to resolution. It was forced up the chain of command until it reached the level of federal military deployment. The United States responded by dispatching a small contingent of soldiers to the island, specifically to prevent British authorities from detaining the American farmer. The British viewed this troop presence as an invasion of sovereign territory and retaliated by deploying heavy naval warships to the coast, using the threat of a bombardment to force a withdrawal. This chart shows the rapid buildup. The Americans expanded their presence to 461 troops and 14 cannons. Those numbers were quickly overwhelmed by the British counter-mobilization, amassing 2,100 troops and 70 heavy cannons on 5 warships. Thousands of men were now staring at each other across a tiny island, their weapons loaded and their orders clear. They were waiting for a command to fire or a single accidental discharge. The mechanics of military brinksmanship had taken over. Neither empire felt it could order a retreat without suffering a blow to its international standing, trapping both nations in an escalation loop over an animal shooting. The turning point came when the British naval admiral finally received direct orders to engage the American forces. He refused to follow them. The admiral looked at the massive fleet, the entrenched soldiers, and the dead pig that initiated the crisis, and concluded that dragging 2 nations into a bloodbath over a farm animal was a ridiculous waste of life. His refusal to fire bought the time necessary for leaders in Washington and London to communicate. Both governments agreed to halt all reinforcements and establish a joint military occupation, while diplomats negotiated a legal settlement. In this instance, the institutional discipline to recognize an absurd situation and stand down proved more effective than any military maneuver. For the next 12 years, American and British troops maintained permanent military camps on opposite ends of San Juan Island, living peacefully side by side without a single act of violence. The standoff was finally resolved in 1872. Both nations submitted the dispute to German Emperor Wilhelm I for arbitration, and he legally awarded the island to the United States. Despite the presence of 5 warships, dozens of cannons, and thousands of ready soldiers, the total human death toll of the conflict was 0. The Pig War remains a historical proof that diplomacy and patience can diffuse even the most heavily armed standoffs. If you want to see more strange but true stories from history, subscribe for more.